Okay, so to pick up where we left off, and I'm going to go finish the lecture, this chapter, talking about what the reporting and deposit requirements are for FICA and FIT. This chapter is on FICA, but just so that you know, everything that you do with the IRS pertains to FIT and FICA, federal income tax and FICA, even though this chapter is just on FICA. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So just talking about major forms and major documents that you need to complete to comply with this whole part of the process, payroll process. SS4 and SS5. And SS4, if you're going to become an employer, so you have to file for an EIN, an employer identification number. And to do that, you complete an SS4. And you send it to the IRS, and you're going to get a number that's the same number of digits as a social. It starts with 2 digits and then a dash and then 6 more digits. So it's the same. It's like a social security number for a business. And SS5 is to apply for your own social security number. And honestly, you get sent home from the hospital when you have a baby with these now. You have to have an EIN, or not an EIN, a social security number for a child to claim them on your tax return. So like when I was a kid, I actually applied for and got my first social security number when I got my first job at 14 years old. And that was kind of like a big thrill, but now everybody has them from the time they're born. Okay, so this is what we're going to be working on today. What's required for Social Security purposes? You have to complete a Form 941, and you should have one sitting in front of you. And the name is an employer's quarterly federal tax return. And there's a couple important things in the title that will help ground you. One is the word quarterly, which means I file it how many times a year? 4. So it's every 3 months I have to complete a 941. And it's only federal taxes. So none of your state taxes go on it. It's right in the title. It's filed quarterly, and it's only for federal taxes. So when you see a 941, you can just say to yourself, FICA, FICA, FIT. Both shares of FICA are paid on it or reconciled on it, and FIT. So when are these things due? The first quarter of the year is January, February, March. That one is due on April 30th, the end of the month following the close of the quarter. So right now we're in which quarter? Third. When does the third quarter close? September 30th. So when is that 941 due? October 31st. Then our next quarter closes on 12/31 on December 31st, and that one's due on January 31st. So it's the very last day of the month following when the quarter closes. If you're a really, really tiny employer, in other words, you only owe $1,000 or less in FICA, FICA, FIT all year long, so you just have like one very part-time employee, you don't have to go through this quarterly filing. You can just file once a year, and that's called a 944. Okay, now this is important. So what we've been studying in this chapter is how to calculate FICA, right? How do I take FICA out of my people's paychecks? Anything you take out of your people's paychecks has to go somewhere. You have to send it to somebody. If I take union dues out of your paycheck, I have to submit them to the union. If I take health insurance premiums out of your paycheck, I have to send them to the insurance company. If I take FICA and FIT out of your paycheck, I have to send it to the IRS. And then I got to match the FICA, right? So it's always deposited together. The question is, how often do you have to deposit? And the answer is, it depends. There's 2 major schedules that most people comply with. but there's exceptions to it if you're really ginormous or you're really small. So the basic rule is that every November, the IRS will go and look at how much you deposited in the prior year to get a feeling of how big your payroll is. It's called the look back period. And then they send you a letter and they tell you you're one of two things. You're either monthly or you're semi-weekly. If you're a monthly depositor, that means you're a pretty small company and you have until the 15th of the next month to deposit for that whole month. So for example, right now, say I'm a monthly depositor. I own Big Dipper ice cream. And I've got, 6 people that work for minimum wage for me, right? So if I run payroll every week, I hold on to all that FICA fit the whole month of September, and then I deposit it all by what? October 15th. So don't get the deposit dates confused with the 9/41 due date. Everybody files the form 4 times a year at the end of the month following the close of the quarter. But deposits look very different depending upon who you are. So if I'm Big Dipper ice cream and they tell me I'm monthly, FICA fit is due the 15th of the following month. If I'm the depot and I've got, 80 employees, I'm probably, the IRS is going to write me my letter in November based on my look back period and say, you're semi-weekly. And that's a little bit different. Well, it's very different. That basically gives you 3 business days to get your FICA fit to the IRS. And this is what it looks like. If you cut a paycheck on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and here it works. So if you pay on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, you have to deposit by the next Wednesday. And if your payday is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, you have to have it to the IRS by Friday. And you just need to memorize this little chart. There's no intuitive way to remember this. You just need to memorize it.
So it's basically the start of the next pay period?
No, because what if I only pay once a month?
Right.
So it's virtually, it's roughly equivalent to about 3 to 4 business days. And this is just how it is. So if I'm a pretty good sized company, I'm going to be told that I'm semi-weekly. In other words, the IRS wants their money within 3 days. Fair enough, because it's a chunk of change. If I'm a little company, they're like, you don't need to bother doing this to deposit $189.36. You can just save it and do it once a month. Okay, does that make sense? So those are the 2 basic rules. However, as in many things in tax law, there's exceptions, which are, if you're a really, really big company like the University of Montana, or company, organization, and you run payroll and you owe more than $100,000, which I bet you in any given payroll at the university, we probably owe over $1 million of payroll taxes. You've got 24 hours to get it in the bank. Okay, so they're going to tell you you're semi-weekly, but you're an exception to the rule because you're so big you've got 24 hours. Okay? Or, on the other hand, if you're a really small organization and you owe less than $2,500 for the quarter, i.e. when you file your 941, you don't have to deposit at all. You can just send the up to $2,500 with your 941. So if you accumulate less than $2,500 for the whole quarter, just hold on to it and send a check with the 941. Although nobody really writes checks anymore, it's electronic deposit.
Question, so you're doing it every day, like university, for example, and are they estimating taxes when they submit
No, like we'll run a payroll on the 1st of October. Our staff here gets paid twice a month, but faculty only gets paid once a month. So the 1st of the month, every professor at the university gets paid, plus the staff gets one of their 2 paychecks. So I bet you that's a $50 million payroll. So you can just kind of in your head do the math on that. It's probably about an $800,000-900,000 deposit. So when they run payroll on the 1st of October, that's got to be to the bank the 2nd of October.
Oh, they have to.
Right. And when they run payroll at the university, obviously they've just got it set up to do the EFT the next day, the electronic funds transfer. Now, if you're a new employer, so I'm just signing up, what did I file to get my EIN again? Yeah, I just filed my SS4, I just got an EIN. I'm one of the new data mining companies in town. And I'm like, and I've got a couple employees, I'm like, what am I going to do the first year? I don't have a look back period. When you start the first year, everybody's monthly. You get to go monthly for the first year. Unless you're so ginormous out of the chute that you hit that $100,000 mark. That probably doesn't happen too terribly often around here. And there are different rules for ag employers and for household employers. So if I've got a nanny or something like that. Okay, so in the old days, we calculated the amount. We got a coupon booklet from the IRS. We ripped out the coupon, we filled it all in, and we stood in line at the bank to deposit it. Okay, that's with a check. And then you got a paper receipt and you filed it, right? You know most of you probably don't know what I'm even talking about. But that's how we did it in the quaint old days. Some of you do. But now everything's EFTPS, Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. You need to know this acronym because this is what you would have to use if you process payroll or you manage a company that processes payroll. You're going to use EFTPS. And it's a way to electronically transmit your tax returns. So when you become an employer, when you do that SS4, right along with that, you should do your 9779, which you can get on that irs.gov. Whenever I give you a form number, where do you get those? You go to irs.gov, and you fill it out, and that gives you the ability to comply with EFTPS. They'll do, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like a practice withdrawal before they do the real one to make sure it's going to work. The only exception is if you're so small that you're that only up to $2,500 a quarter. Okay, this is important. Okay, so here's the 941. I just want to look at the sections, and then we're going to go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Just to be clear, the 100,000 that's the total payroll.
No, that's the total payroll liabilities.
That's the tax liability.
Yeah, the example I gave, like the university, say they have a $50 million payroll. The tax portion of that, say, is $990,000. So they've got 1 day to get that 990 grand to the feds. Okay, so there's, I think, 6 sections to your 941. First section's pretty straightforward. Here's my EIN, like I just told you, it's 2 digits, then a dash, and then another 7 digits. Your name, your address, and what quarter are you reporting for? Okay, then in part 1, line 1, asks how many employees did you have during the middle of the quarter you're reporting for. Line 2 asks for gross wages that are taxable for federal income tax purposes. Line 3, how much did you withhold for the quarter for federal income tax? Line 5A is how much is taxable for OASDI. Is that number always going to be the same as line 2? Why not? Cody, you're shaking your head no. Just not feeling it?
No.
When would you have taxable wages that are different for Social Security calculations than they are for federal income tax calculations? Somebody's capped. One of my employees made 500 grand. They're not going to have, it's going to all be taxable on line 2. It's not going to all be taxable on line 5A, is it? And then you multiply that number that's taxable for OASDI by 0.124. Where did 0.124 come from? Very good. 6.2 plus 6.2, right? Same on line 5C with Medicare, times 0.029. When I add up my OASDI and my HI, I get both shares of FICA, right? So that's FICA. My FIT's up here on line 3. Both shares of FICA is here on line 5E. And I add those together, line 6 is my total taxes. At the bottom of this front page, I'm not going to go into line 7 right now, but let's just say line 6 and 10 are the same. Line 11 are my deposits. If I owed $23,831 during the quarter, do you think that I'm probably monthly or probably semi-weekly? I would guess semi-weekly. That's a chunk of change. So I've been depositing basically every 3 or 4 days, right? All quarter. Then on the second page of the 941, oh, I don't know why they didn't do that. Okay, let's jump now. Rather than sit here and look at all this, let's do it. So you need a pencil, you need a calculator, you need your 941 in front of you, and you need the payroll register open, please. And let's start with, there's 2 tabs down here, right? Banner Drug and Sure Value. Let's go to Banner Drug for the first one. And just cover up, I don't know, no, it doesn't matter. Let's just start here. Okay, so it looks to me like we've got a drugstore that they pay weekly, that they've got 4 employees, and that they are in a state that pays income taxes, right? Because they've got SIT. And so every week, their payroll is going to look the same. That's not, I'm just doing that for learning purposes. Generally, if you've got overtime, your payroll is not going to look the same every week, is it? But we just have to assume that because that's what we're practicing. So how many times a quarter is payroll cut if you pay weekly? How many times? So the answer is 12 or 13. A couple, no, it's 13 every time. 52 weeks in a year. Divided by 4, yes, 13. Okay, 13 paychecks, right? Because there's 52 weeks in a year, 4 quarters in a year, 52 divided by 4 is 13. So what we're going to do is take this payroll register and transfer it to our 941. So the first thing I'd like you to do, you don't have the address, so don't worry about that, but get in the, and this is the what? Second quarter. So get in your little heading on the top there, Banner Drugstore, and the FEIN, and click off the quarter. So you're going to actually be manually filling out the 941 in front of you. So second quarter. Okay, now, we don't have the addresses, so just don't worry about that. Line 1, number of employees who received wages, tips, or other compensation for the pay period including, and we're on the second quarter, so they want you to actually go tally up how many employees you had working for you on June 12th, which is halfway through the second quarter. And like I just said, even though it's not really realistic, let's just pretend it was the same payroll all quarter. So I had 4 people, right? Okay. Now we're on line 3, or I'm sorry, line 2. I want you to figure out what the wages were for the entire quarter. Does it look here like there's going to be anybody capping or anything to worry about? No. So based on the payroll register, how are you going to calculate how much the gross wages are for one quarter? Don't say it out loud, but go find your number and put it in. And then we'll talk about it. You're going to have to calculate something.
Or we're gonna treat it as if they were getting paid.
You're going to treat it as if it was this exact same payroll register every,
Treat it as if they got the same overtime.
Yeah. yeah, even though that's not realistic. So I took the total gross wages times the number of paychecks in the quarter. So 2,209 times 13. Is that right? That doesn't seem right.
That's 28.
Yeah, I got it.
What the heck did I do? Sorry, that's not right. I could, just the minute I looked at that, I could see that. What's your number?
28,717.
I don't know who filled out this answer key. Okay, second thing. How much federal income tax was withheld for the whole quarter? Okay, now, of these 4 lines in here, let's just go through these. We've looked at them briefly before. Taxable Social Security wages is what portion of the gross wages paid this quarter are susceptible to OASDI? I'm just going to read all these and then I want you to complete this section. 5B is if you have some people that have tips. 5C is what portion of the gross wages are susceptible to Medicare, and 5D is what portion of the gross wages are susceptible to that additional 0.9. Alfred?
Just round up or round down, percent off.
No, actually in these returns you have to take it to the penny. Yeah, not income tax, but payroll tax you do. Pain in the butt. So you should be able to complete it now down to line 6. Okay, so let's stop here and just ask some questions. What would you tell me are the total taxes for the entire quarter for federal purposes? $64.99.70. What would you tell me, you'll have to do a calculation, what is one share of total FICA? What's just the employee share of total FICA? How are you going to figure that? The employee only share of total FICA. Which number?
The 1 and 6.
I don't think so because that's FIT and FICA is in line 6, isn't it?
Line 5E.
I think you have to take line 5E divided by 2. So it'd be $2,196.85. So the next question we've got now is with these adjustments. So there's two different ways, in my opinion, to do these. Let's go back and see what the deposits were. And I'm guessing, okay, it says here that the deposits were $6,500. Does that look about right to you? That's about right, isn't it? So let's go, and if it's within a buck or two, you feel pretty confident. So let's go plug in my deposits here. And then let's look at these other couple lines. So in the book, they use line 7 to adjust that $64.99.70 to equal $6,500. In other words, they're going to round the 30 cents in there. I don't find that to be the easiest way, and I'll explain why when I get there and we do it. So I want you to just carry the number down from line 6 to line 10, and it tells you right on line 10 the instructions are to total up line 6 through 9. And then line 12, the instructions are subtract 11 from 10. Really filling these things out is just reading. And then entering the deposit. So do you think that you're going to ask the IRS to send you 30 cents? No. If it's under $1, you either just put a line through the balance due or a line through the overpayment. So I can't do a line in here, but 13 is more than 12, but you're just going to draw a line through that box. You're not going to have them send you the 30 cents or apply it forward because you'll be dealing with that 30 cents forever. Okay, flip the 941. Now we're on the back. And don't forget to fill in the top up here again. Now it's asking, am I a semi-monthly, or I'm sorry, semi-weekly or a monthly? And what are you just guessing? What would you think they are? Probably monthly. It's not that big of a payroll. If you've got 13 checks in a month, or I'm sorry, in a quarter, you're going to have a couple months with 4 paychecks and 1 month with 5 paychecks. So choose which of those 2 boxes are accurate for number 16, and then we'll talk about what to do next. Which box are you going to check? Yep. And then it tells you enter your tax liability for each month and total your liability for the quarter and then go to part 3. So I need to fill out how much I owed each month because they're going to compare that to what I deposited, right? Make sure that I'm on track. I can't just take the amount and divide by 3 because 2 months had 4 checks and 1 month had 5 checks. So you should be able to go back to your payroll register and see that. I have to tell you that. What do I tell you?
May had 5.
April had 4, May had 5, June had 4. Let's calculate how much we think we owe for one payroll. And then whatever that number is, you multiply by 4 and by 5 and by 4 to fill in those 3 months of liability. So based on your payroll register, let's all figure out what we think we owe for one payroll. Anyone have the number? Alyssa, did you get it? I'm going to take 168.99 plus 168.99, right? FICA, plus 162 for FIT. So it looks to me like I owe $499.98 for one payroll. And it wants me to convert that to how much I owe for a month. So if I owe $499.98 for one payroll, what do I multiply that by to get my month 1 tax liability? 4. And for the month 2, I multiply by 5. So let's do those first couple. So $499. Does anybody need me to rework where the $499.98 came from? Everyone see where that came from? Tanner, you want me to do that again?
No, I just did it a different way.
Okay. Oops. Now, here's the key. On this last one, it tells us this must equal line 12. So whatever you put in line 12 on the back, plug in here. Or on the front, excuse me. We're going to adjust it here. We're going to make it work. So as Kai just said, well, wait a second. So tally that up and tell me if it adds up. $24.99.9. So if I add those 3 numbers, it actually comes to 6499.74. So just change the 3rd month and force it to work. It was 70 cents. I need to drop it by, no, sorry. That's not what I want to do. Oh. What was this number, 74?
Yeah.
This needs to be 88. Sorry. Does that make sense? Now, I've taped all this. If you were a little lost on what we were doing, I would absolutely go back with another blank 941 and listen to the tape and rework this whole thing. I'm going to put up one more for the last 9 minutes. I'm going to put up one more 941, and then let me just talk about what's happening the rest of the week. So on Friday, your last 2 pieces of homework are due for this chapter, which is a 941. Then we'll go over all the homework for chapter 3 on Friday and reinforce this chapter. Your review is open for the exam. And I told you that the exam was 2 days. It's Monday and Wednesday. Monday is the multiple choice and the short essay. In other words, the numbers, the calculations. Next Wednesday is a 941. So that's basically the test. Okay, let's go and look. So get your second 941 out, please.
First page up there again,
Sure.
just for a second. It's something wrong
Take down the numbers, David. Yeah. And then if you need help figuring out where they came from, I'm happy to do that.
there. That's all.
So would it be wrong just to divide your 12 by 13 and times it by 11?
You should get the same answer. Oh, thank you. Okay, here is Sure Value Hardware, and they pay biweekly. So how many times a year do they pay?
Four.
26. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah, 26. So how many times a quarter do they pay? This is a kind of a trick question. It does change. Some quarters they pay 6 times. Some quarters they pay 7 times. So I've got to tell you, don't I? And I do, that in July, August, and September, this is one of the 6 paycheck quarters. So I'm just going to give you the last 6 minutes to start on this. We'll go over this in class on Friday straight away, and then we'll go over all your homework.